The ghost flight that landed itself. True horror story.
We've all heard ghost stories. One person sees a shadow. We call it a hallucination. Two people hear a whisper. We call it the wind. But what happens when an entire flight crew sees the same dead man? At 30,000 feet? And what if that ghost isn't there to scare you, but to stop the plane from exploding? This is not a creepypasta. This is the true story of the most haunted flight in American aviation. A crash that killed 100 souls. A salvage operation that spread their spirits across the fleet. And a warning from the grave that saved nearly 200 lives. Welcome back to Hollow Hours. Buckle up, it's going to be a rough flight. November 3rd, 1974. A cold night over the Midwest. Horizon Airlines Flight 707 was a routine red-eye from Chicago Lakewood International to Orlando Sunnyside Airport. On board, two legendary pilots, Captain James Harker, a former Air Force colonel with 20,000 hours, and First Officer David Reynes, known as the Iceman for his calm under pressure. The plane was a brand new Trident L-1011, the pride of the fleet. 176 passengers, many of them families returning from Thanksgiving break. They were 90 seconds from landing when a tiny light bulb burned out, the gear indicator. The pilots knew the landing gear was down, but the bulb said it wasn't. Instead of landing, they got trapped in a checklist. A $2 light bulb became a $100 million distraction. In the dark cockpit, Captain Harker leaned forward to tap the faulty bulb. His elbow brushed the control column. The autopilot, disconnected without any warning alarm, clicked off. The plane began a silent, gentle descent toward the Florida wetlands. Nobody felt it. The ground radar was muted. The crew was too focused on the bulb. At 11:42 p.m., the ground proximity alarm screamed. Flight 707 slammed into the Everglades swamps at 230 miles per hour. 101 people died instantly. Among them, Captain Harker and First Officer Ronins. The NTSB called it pilot error, a distraction no one survived to explain. But the dead didn't stay quiet. Horizon Airlines was hemorrhaging money, so instead of scrapping the wreckage, they did something cheap and terrifying. They recycled every working part. The parts were scattered across the fleet, but most of them ended up on a specific plane. Flight 802, a daily shuttle from Atlanta to New York's JFK. For 6 months, nothing happened. Then the reports started. First, passengers complained of a cold spot in row 19. Then a flight attendant named Patty was pouring coffee. She felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned. No one was there. But the man in 19C, a businessman, looked up and said, "Ma'am, why did you just serve coffee to an empty seat?" Patty laughed nervously until the next flight. The third time, Patty was alone in the galley. She saw the reflection in the oven door. A man, burned. His uniform was soaked in swamp water. His eyes were hollow, and he spoke.
Don't turn it on. Fire. Fire in the wire.
By Christmas of 1975, the legend of the ghost of Flight 802 was a dark joke at Horizon Airlines. Crews refused to work it. But that year, demand was insane. The flight was overbooked, every seat filled. A senior flight attendant named Laura was working the midnight galley. She had 180 hot meals to prepare in under 2 hours. She opened the first oven, fine. The second oven, fine. But when she reached for the third, the reflection appeared again. David Reynes, standing directly behind her. His mouth moved, but this time the voice came from inside the oven.
Stop. Thermal short. Galley C, you have 30 seconds.
Laura didn't wait. She sprinted to the cockpit. The captain, a gruff ex-military man named Captain Webb, rolled his eyes. Not this ghost crap again. But Laura grabbed his arm. Just shut off the galley power. Please, smell the air. Webb ordered an emergency descent into JFK. The plane landed 18 minutes early. Fire crews rushed aboard. The mechanics found a frayed power cable inside the oven relay box. It had been arcing for hours. If Laura had turned that oven to 350 degrees, the spark would have ignited the oxygen-enriched air in the galley. At 30,000 feet, that fire would have spread to the fuel lines in under 90 seconds. David Reynes, a dead man, had just saved 187 lives. Horizon Airlines did everything to bury the story. They fired one flight attendant who talked to the press. They called it mass hysteria. But quietly, they issued a silent directive. Remove every part from Flight 707 immediately. They even brought in a priest to bless the entire fleet. Holy water in the galleys. Prayers over the intercom. But here is the secret they never admitted. Scrapping parts costs money. Some relays, a single altimeter, the cockpit voice recorder. They were never destroyed. They were misplaced, which means David Raines and James Harker might still be flying to this day on older planes, on smaller commuter jets. You know that weird feeling you get on a red-eye? That smell of burnt coffee? That feeling someone is watching you from the back galley? Maybe you're not paranoid. Maybe you're just flying with the dead. That is the horror of Flight 707, a tragedy that became a guardian angel story, a warning from beyond the grave. But I promised you a mystery. So here is your challenge for the Hollow Hours community. We just told a story about a haunted plane, but America has its own famous ground-based ghost story, a place called the Queen Mary, a retired ocean liner docked in Long Beach, California. Thousands of visitors report seeing a drowning man in the engine room who warns them about fires. That man, he was a real sailor who died in 1966. The question is, what is the exact name of the ghost that haunts the Queen Mary's engine room? Hint, it's not the captain. First person to comment the correct name, or the most terrifying guess, gets a personal shout out in my next video. Subscribe to Hollow Hours, turn on notifications, and next time you fly, avoid Row 19. Good night. While Flight 707 lives on in aviation folklore, the Queen Mary remains one of the most enduring legends of haunted travel. Unlike Flight 707, the stories aboard the Queen Mary are well documented, with numerous witnesses across years of observance. They say the Queen Mary grapples with more than just one ghost. The engine room's haunted by the infamous drowning man, but go topside and you'll hear the echo of a child's laughter from the now empty pool deck. Two legendary vessels, each with their ghosts, yet one sailed and one soared. Consider this your invitation to delve deeper into the stories of these two marvels. The air and sea have heard countless whispers and warnings, and it's up to those willing to listen to uncover the truth behind these shadowed tales.
Disclaimer. This video contains story collected from internet sources like articles and blogs. All the images used are purely AI generated and are solely a representation of the situation narrated in the video. This video's purpose is to entertain and not to hurt anybody's sentiment.